ambitions. They can either sink you or elevate you to the top, making you stand out from the crowd. Despite an intriguing premise, Quantum Error unfortunately is the former, buckling under the weight of an overabundance of poorly executed ideas and bad game design. It is a flawed, frustrating and unfun slog that ranks up there as one of the most painful video game experiences I've ever had. Quantum Error is one part first person / third person shooter, one part cosmic horror, and one part fireman simulator from Team Kill Media, an American studio founded by 4 brothers, an impressive accomplishment in isolation. However, the studio's vision for the game was clearly hindered by a limited budget and its ability to execute on that vision. Team Kill Media has even admitted that it's learning as it goes, so hopefully it uses Quantum Error as a good learning experience because there are some promising concepts here. Set in the year 2109 in the United Nations of America, you play as Gaboa Fire Department Captain Jacob Thomas. Alongside his crew, Jacob is sent to the offshore Monad Quantum Research Facility to deal with a fire that has broken out after it was attacked by an unknown entity. Jacob thinks it's a simple rescue mission, but not long after arrival he is separated from his team and discovers that shit has hit the fan as a military outfit named Medusa has infiltrated Monad in the search of an artifact. His mission to survive will see him travel to various planets, meet a wide cast of characters, and face down things not of this world. It's certainly not revolutionary in any sense, but it's intriguing enough that I found myself curious as to what was coming next. It's obvious that Quantum Error wants to be a cinematic sci-fi action horror game with a lot of effort and budget going into creating the cutscenes. To Team Kill Media's credit, these instances have some cool sequences and cinematography. However, the voice acting doesn't quite hit the same heights, but it is serviceable enough given the writing isn't great. Although we do get some bangers like this.
How do you expect me to get your blue ball back? Hey, Mr. Flaming Sword, can I have that back? What was that?
I don't know, but that blue ball is your friend's only hope to live.
Unfortunately, playing Quantum Error isn't as enjoyable as watching it, beginning with quite possibly 2 of the worst tutorials I've ever played. The first drops you onto a street with nothing more than an assault rifle and the dual sensor's adaptive triggers to get through it. Instantly, the shooting mechanics feel dated and unsatisfying, and with enemies taking large chunks of your health as you try to figure out what is happening, it's not a great first impression. The second tutorial introduces you to the fireman mechanics, as Jacob is put through an agility test that tasks him with using all the tools a fireman would, such as an axe, crowbar, sledgehammer and a saw. Twice I had to restart this due to an objective not triggering and not being able to pick up a hose. There's also a CPR mechanic that requires you to blow into the controller's mic. A neat idea in theory, but I couldn't get it to work properly, a constant theme throughout the game. Once we get into the campaign proper, Jacob is exploring the corridors of the Monad facility with nothing more than his axe and a desire to save every person he can. If you're excited about using the axe as a weapon, don't be. It's clunky and unsatisfying to use, though it is comical to chop off someone's noggin despite not hitting them in the head. Stealth is encouraged but is essentially pointless, as enemies will hear you as soon as you open doors, even if they're in different rooms. Thankfully, you'll know your cover is blown by a red indicator in the bottom of the screen, so you can prepare accordingly. It's not long before Jacob gets himself a gun, and from there is quickly decked out with an arsenal including a shotgun, rocket launcher, minigun, a lava cannon of sorts, and others. It's hard to emphasize just how poor the gunplay is, which is a shame because the weapons at Jacob's disposal could have been a ton of fun to use. Instead, guns lack power and heft, and while the adaptive triggers feel nice sometimes, there's not much else going for it. It's not helped by buggy weapon and equipment wheels that frequently don't appear when activated and will often select the wrong weapon or tool. The most frustrating part about it all is just how slow it is, especially reloading, as you can't partly reload a weapon such as the shotgun if you just need a couple of shells to get you out of a jam. You have to stand there and watch Jacob reload the entire magazine while you or those you're meant to be protecting take damage. There's one sequence early-ish in proceedings where you have to defend a doctor while he deals with a patient. It's a 3-way fight that not only drags on for far too long, but you can easily get overwhelmed if you're caught with your pants down reloading. Perhaps more egregiously, the game will drop ammo for guns you don't have yet, meaning you'll have to make do with what you've got while also flush with useless bullets. Then there's the enemy AI, which is truly laughable. Guards will often just stand around a corner, not putting up much of a fight and wait for you to shoot them, but will also sometimes nail you from distance with apparent ease. And when you do shoot them, they'll turn and run with their hand in the air screaming, "I need backup." It's hilariously bad. Creatures, on the other hand, will simply run at you as you shoot them dead in their tracks, and those that do manage to engage with you can easily be dispatched with, unless you're caught reloading or buggering around with the weapon wheel. Players can switch between first and third person shooter by pushing the touchpad, and while third person is fine, the game works much better as a first person experience. Boss fights don't fare much better, and though they're not overly hard, I was playing on a high difficulty too, they feel like a chore to play. One boss fight on Jupiter had 4 phases with no checkpoints, and in the third phase there was no ammo available to loot. So if you ran out of ammo during the battle, or out of the ammo for the gun that broke the boss's shield, you had no choice but to restart. But just to really keep you on your toes, Quantum Error will throw invisible enemies at you, though the game doesn't ever signpost this, so you'll just start randomly taking damage. The first couple of times this happened, I had no idea what was going on, and it wasn't until I decided just to shoot the space in front of me that I realised what I was up against. Furthermore, a robot will roam the facility that disables guns, and is usually backed up by accompanying enemies as it floats around. You can destroy it to regain weapon use, but you have to find it first, and in one instance I came up against a powerful enemy who shredded me before I could even locate the bot. It's things like this that create artificial difficulty and make dying feel cheap. It's amplified by how bad the checkpointing is, as they're too far spread out and not smartly implemented. There is a save system akin to the typewriters used in Resident Evil, where you can also go and upgrade Jacob's skills with Quintessence. You will likely use it to avoid losing chunks of time, but it's a double-edged sword as it usually requires backtracking, and then when you do die, all enemies you've killed will respawn, as will resources thankfully. I lost hours replaying the same areas over and over again because of the above, and every time Jacob died, I felt myself die inside a little bit too. The litany of game design flaws doesn't stop there. You have access to a map, but it can only be viewed at terminals randomly spread throughout the Monarch facility. You need to equip your crowbar every time you want to open an ammo or health crate, and there's no quick select for your most used weapons or tools. One sequence tasked Jacob with carrying an injured NPC through shark-infested waters, which for the most part was knee-deep, but occasionally he had to submerge, which he did without slowing down a single bit, despite carrying another human underwater. What an absolute beast. Each level in the Monarch facility has 2 rooms that can be unlocked for safe haven, replenishing ammo and upgrading your weapons. The codes are located somewhere in the facility, often not near the door itself, but the worst part is that the game doesn't remember these codes, so every time you want to open the room you need to hit pause, go to your notes, find the code you need, go back to the game and punch it into a finicky little screen. Built on Unreal Engine 5, Quantum Error does have some impressive lighting, and when it does dial into the cosmic horror elements, the atmosphere can be spooky. Largely though, don't expect to be blown away by how it looks. Although it is fairly polished from a visual standpoint, I had very few frame rate drops or anything like that. However, I did encounter some bugs, such as game crashes, twice during a boss fight, being unable to pick up items, as well as objectives resetting to earlier ones. At one point I was unable to progress due to my objective not updating, and had to wait a couple of days for the devs to implement a fix in a patch. That really should have been the death knell of my playthrough, but I chose to persist because I wanted to hit those credits. But it proved to be a bridge too far, as I simply had to walk away from my own sanity. Despite not reaching the ending, my PS5 tells me that I've played 35 hours of Quantum Error, which is more than anyone should ever play. While Team Kill Media has poured years of blood, sweat and tears into this project, rather than keeping it a family affair, Quantum Error is a game that would have benefited massively from an external pair of eyes just to cut back on some of the scope of the project, especially when this is a full price title. It's a shame because the core premise is interesting enough and we need more firemen in video games. But this ain't it, Chief.